Lights on Maple Street. Chapter 8. Side by Side. The last notes of the hymn lingered in the small church long after the voices had settled. They clung to the rafters, to the smooth backs of the pews, to the air itself, as if the sound did not quite know where to go, now that it had been let loose. When the congregation stood, the old wood responded in kind. Pews creaked softly. A low collective sigh rose as knees straightened, and coats were shrugged back into place. The church was warm, warmed by bodies and breath, and the steady hum of shared presence. Sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows, laying muted bands of color across shoulders and hair. Blue, amber, a soft wash of red. The light drifted slowly as the afternoon shifted. Jack pushed the door open. The hinge protested the way it always had. Cool air rushed in, clean and sharp, carrying the smell of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. The sudden change in temperature raised goosebumps along forearms and necks. Outside, the church stood as it always had. White clapboard siding, weathered but cared for, paint worn thin at the edges, where years of hands had brushed past. It was a one-room building, simple, unassuming, narrow steps, windows that caught the light. Like quiet, watchful eyes, people gathered in loose clusters on the steps and along the gravel walk. Someone clasped Jack's hand firmly. The grip was familiar, solid. Another man pulled him in for a brief hug that thumped warmly against his chest. Good to see you. Been a while. Glad you made it. Sarah felt hands reach for hers. Gentle squeezes, welcoming smiles. A woman bent slightly to Jenny's height and asked her name again. Jenny answered shyly at first, then a little louder. When the woman smiled wide, Oscar stood just behind them. Calm, observant, he took in the sound of voices overlapping, the rhythm of greetings and laughter. He noticed the breeze lifting the hems of coats, leaves skittering across the steps, gathering at the base of the church wall. Someone mentioned, almost in passing, how Margaret used to play the piano there. She could make that old thing sing. Played soft, but she filled the room. The words settled gently, like leaves finding their place. Sarah listened. She did not speak, but she felt the weight of what was being offered. Not expectation, not obligation, just shared memory. Jack nodded once, acknowledging the kindness, without needing to add to it. Hugs happened easily. Hands found shoulders. For a few moments, the family stood together, while the town moved gently around them. The church behind them, holding its quiet vigil. They stopped at a small park, not far from the church, the kind that did not announce itself, with signs or fences. A stretch of grass opened beneath old trees, whose leaves had begun to let go in earnest. Some drifted down in slow spirals. Others broke loose in sudden flurries. When the wind stirred, picnic tables sat beneath the branches. Their surfaces were worn smooth by decades of use. At one end of the park, a swing set stood empty. Its chains clinked softly. When the breeze nudged them, they spread out lunch. Paper crinkled as sandwiches were unwrapped. The thermos sighed when the cap was twisted free. Warm soup scent rose into the air. Apples were passed hand to hand. Cool, firm, chips rustled as bags were opened. Salt caught on fingertips. The air was cool, but not cold. Sunlight filtered through thinning leaves, dappling the table, dappling the ground beneath their feet. A crow called once, from somewhere deeper in the trees. Far off, laughter drifted in and out, carried by the breeze. They ate slowly. Oscar arranged his food carefully. Methodical, content. Jenny offered half her apple. After a few bites, too crunchy, Sarah accepted it with a smile. Jack leaned back on the bench, watching the way light moved across the park, watching the way time seemed to stretch and soften halfway through her sandwich. Jenny looked up. Can we come back to church again? The question hung there, simple, unadorned. Sarah did not answer right away. She looked at Jenny, really looked. She took in the earnestness, the quiet hope threaded through the question. Jack waited, hands resting loosely on his knees. Oscar paused, watching. Then Sarah nodded. Just once, Jenny smiled. Satisfied, she went back to eating, as if the answer had been expected all along. After lunch, the bikes came out. Oscar and Jenny wheeled them onto the path that curved through the park. Tires whispered over pavement, scattered with leaves. Jenny aimed straight for the biggest piles. She laughed as copper and gold burst outward beneath her wheels. Oscar followed at his own pace. Steady, sure, he chose smoother lines. Let the bike glide where the ground allowed. The chain clicked once, then settled into a soft, reliable hum. Cool air filled their lungs. Wind brushed their cheeks, tugged at jacket sleeves. Leaves caught briefly in spokes, before tumbling free again. They did not race. They did not need to. They rode side by side, laughter trailing behind them, like a ribbon that slowly unwound and disappeared. The nursing home was quieter. The automatic door sighed open. Air smelled faintly of soap and warm linen. Wheels rolled softly on tile. Somewhere down the hall, a television murmured. Behind a closed door, Margaret's room was filled with afternoon light. Curtains stirred gently at the window. A quilt was folded neatly at the foot of the bed. On the dresser sat a small collection of photographs. One caught a narrow stripe of sun, a boy in a scout uniform, smiling into a day long past. Oscar placed the jewelry box on the bedside table. He set it carefully. He made sure it was within her sight. The box stayed closed. Margaret looked at it. Her gaze lingered, Her eyes softened. Recognition passed through them. Like a quiet current, Jenny noticed the photograph. "Who's that?" Oscar looked at the picture first, then at Margaret, then back again. "That's my dad." The room held still around them. "We used to play together in my dreams." Oscar paused, thoughtful, "But we don't need to now." Jenny frowned slightly, uncertain. "I have a real friend." Oscar's voice was gentle. He patted her shoulder. The touch was easy. "Sure." Margaret's eyes closed once, then opened. Her hand rested near the jewelry box. It stayed with her. Later, Jack and Sarah drove out of town. The road unwound beneath them. Trees flanked the way, blazing with color. The window was cracked just enough to let the scent of leaves and cool air spill inside. The heater ticked softly. As it adjusted, they did not talk much. They did not need to. At the park, the trail led them through damp earth and pine. Shoes found roots and stones. With practiced ease, their pace matched naturally, slowing when needed, waiting without words. The waterfall was small, but steady. Water spilled over rock in a continuous rush. Mist cooled their skin. The sound filled the space between them. Constant, grounding. Sarah turned to say something. Something small, unfinished. Jack leaned in. The kiss was brief, gentle, certain. They rested their foreheads together afterward, smiling softly. The world continued on around them. Water flowed, leaves fell. The day moved forward, side by side.